1945 continued the world's descent into madness. There was no great cause, no unifying war, but rather a total breakdown of order and international society in the face of mental, spiritual, and ethical dissolution. Some torches flared in the night, grasping at some new morality upon which to rebuild the entire world, but even they wrestled with each other in the gore of the 20th century. In February of 1945, the transatlantic war heated up, with Avarignia sending various landing parties to wreak havoc across Zaratherma, bursting into port cities with organized tactics and advanced weaponry, the likes of which was beyond the capability of an Vantrist collective. The policy of the Avarignian invaders was actually rather unique, and one of total civility towards the conquered, at least the majority of them, as they were simply estranged brethren, those who bore the Avarignian blood and therefore warranted natural rights. For the regular person, life in Zaratherma was unstable and chaotic, and at the mercy of the pirate bands and their piecemeal territories. When the invaders came, sharp, collected, clean, and respectful of their inherent rights, imposing law and order, many regular people welcomed them. They would come to build hospitals, provide reliable energy, route clean water to major cities, and even establish gainful employment programs and generous loan offers to locals. Now, the Pazis military government didn't treat the pirates as human. No, piracy marked you out as being tainted by an inherent and genetic criminality, and therefore fit only to be liquidated, a defective, rotting branch to be pruned from the Avarignian genetic tree. Of course, any remaining natives were also marked as subhuman, and put into work camps. Soon, Avarignian aircraft carriers, some of the first of their kind, entered the scene, proving themselves to be essentially moving fortresses, impregnable to attack from the land and often from the sea. Avarignia brought many new aircraft to bear for this effort, namely their premier fighter and bomber, respectively known as the Antha Mark IV and the Tvami Mark I. They far outclassed the nigh non-existent Zarathermite Air Force and were able to outmaneuver their feeble anti-air defenses. All this came together by the end of 1945, resulting in Zaratherma besting the Risu band, ousting them from Pumiapes, and adding the Northerly Realm to their empire. In addition to this, they claimed a wide swath of cities along many coastal regions in Zaratherma. But the Transatlantic War continued, as Avarignia would not rest until it attained the total evisceration of Zaratherma. Within Zaratherma itself, chaos became the order of the day, as coordination had not come so easily this time. Every pirate band had its own idea of what to do, and others made this an opportunity to play for power. One such opportunist was the head of the Spiritza Perthi, the bastard lord himself, Rex Archon Indicitus Deostum. He saw the state of Zaratherma, and within it a new throne for him to occupy. And so he declared Arvupes to be the staging point of his war against disloyal subjects, be they in Peng Bay or Europe. Nature abhors a vacuum, and he would be the avatar of its closing. Joining in with him were the pirate bands of the Zeri Clanar, who administered territory directly to their north, as well as the Ike Zaval, or Angry Lifers, and the Kerman Pavia, or Beer Boys, while all other bands opposed him, headed up by the remnants of the Risu band. And so, the Second Zarathermite Civil War began. A war within a war that would turn the idyllic waters of Peng Bay and Peng Nan red with blood. Meanwhile, to the east, the Mongol-Serdian invasion of Phrygia was moving along at a terrifying pace. The Velocifists of Phrygia were able to keep the two at bay for some time, through 1945, via the use of landmines, but soon they began to press in towards the state's more vital regions, with the Mongols going straight for the Holy Land in January of 1946. Dr. Avarignia initiated a purge of the ranks in an attempt to weasel out exactly who he thinks sabotaged the defense of the 3P. Through to November of 1946, he would arraign teachers, tradesmen, and even regular civilians, torturing them for information, tearing out their fingernails or crushing them with large stones, then promptly drowning them in the sea. He would kill upwards of 10,000 people this way, and the bodies washed up all over the Mediterranean, terrifying those who didn't know what was going on. It reached such a frequency that Avarignia increased the security of its various death camps, initiating an internal review to ensure that their prisoners' corpses were being cremated instead of dumped into the sea. But, for all of this Phrygian paranoia, it gained them little, as Mongolistan broke through to the Holy Land, and Serdia exiled the Philosophists from Europe completely. Mongolistan immediately got to holding their position as they began construction of the Aryan Bolshny Basilic, or the Basilica of the Holy Grave, where it is believed that the Shugaoja was laid to rest, and rose again 3 days later. Mongolistan also took to building hasty gallows and stringing up any Philosophists they found, leaving them to rot all over Jerusalem, causing the city to be flooded with crows and vultures. Meanwhile, not all was well for Mongolistan, as on their eastern flank, Rajasthan was waging their own war, deep into Mongol Persia, and gaining ground through 1945 and 1946, given Mongolistan's single-minded devotion to capturing the Holy Land. Rajasthan's strategy against the Mongols was one of mountain-based combat, using special troops raised in the Himalayan mountains to traverse the rocky and mountainous terrain of Persia better than the plains-focused Mongols ever could, and there they wreaked havoc. Not only did they conduct lightning raids at all hours of the day and night, they also sowed discontent in the local minority populations that had come to accumulate in Mongol Persia, eventually stoking them to revolt in March of 1947. Persians, Arabs, Pashtuns, Kurds, Assyrians, and Jews all erupted in revolt, resulting in a fire that Mongolistan was scarcely able to put out. And so, the front collapsed, and Rajasthan was able to stampede deep into Mongolistani territory, achieving their great victory and claiming dominion over Indian Ocean trade, so much as it existed in a chaotic age like this one. Meanwhile, the Great Persian Revolt put Mongolistan firmly on the back foot, with Phrygia employing a devilish new tactic to regain ground against them: suicide bombers. Trucks, laden with explosives and gasoline, were sent hurtling towards enemy positions as the driver eventually detonated his payload. Sometimes, drivers were chosen with the promise that their families would be released from detention in exchange for their suicide mission. This was traumatizing enough for soldiers on the ground that Phrygia was able to extract a peace from the two of them, with reduced losses. Meanwhile, to the east, 1947 marked a year of yet more horror for Chinese civilization. Nam Ning's civil war drew to a close, with a military dictatorship taking control of the country, and withdrawing from the Suashi League in favor of expanding south, angling for Poyang's island colony of Borneo, sparking a war between the two recent allies. But that wasn't even nearly the worst part. Xiaojin's civil war between racial crown thought and suicidal rebirth was brought to a forceful end on July 19, 1947, when Poyang and Lai Zhou placed the country under a dual occupation council. Several members of Suicidal Rebirth, which had been reclassified from a political terrorist group to a cult, targeted roughly 36 racial crown thought meeting centers and civilian gathering points, and committed near-simultaneous suicide attacks with chlorine gas across Shaojin. As people's flesh was scalded and people drowned in their own blood, the group's interim leader, Hao Yu Sun, shouted down passerby, screaming, "You deserve this. We deserve this. We all deserve this. Your children deserve this. Return to dust, like your god, your traditions, your blood. You do not deserve to live." When authorities appeared to arrest him, he set himself aflame and was left to burn to death. It is estimated that Black Saturday killed nearly 200,000 people, not including the thousands of ritual suicides that took place across the country. It was against this backdrop that Gaizhou, to the north, became a failed state, soon ceasing to exist in the face of its many claimants, all calling themselves Gaizhou. This fate was shared by Gaizhou's direct territorial administrations abroad, being taken by neighboring colonial powers like Tarija, Kalama, and Kaimur, while Lacandon was set adrift on the unwilling journey of independence. In August of 1947, Kilwa, with its new influx of radicalized refugees, ended up using many of them as soldiers to expand its borders, conquering the broadly uncivilized Ovimbindu, Chokwe, Fang, Bartose, Bemba, Sangu, Bobangi, and Bangala tribes. The leader of Kilwa, Chief Mapira Malutsi, stated that the conquest of his neighbors was in the interests of Pan-African unity, that the foreigners responded with strength to weakness, and so the strongest African country must do the same. He carved a message into his chest that read, "Your orphans will forgive me." Then, between 1947 and 1948, Avarignia launched an invasion of Xiaojin's West African colony, which, while almost immediately successful, had pushback from Poyang, Naizhou, and Namning, resulting in a protracted war in West Africa that the regime was not expecting. This meant they had to redirect resources away from the Transatlantic War towards a cause which was a little closer to home. This, in turn, resulted in the Bastard Lords taking back most of the recently occupied cities, though what was once Pumiapes remained beyond their reach. This lull in the Transatlantic War resulted in the Bastard Lords wielding a more advantageous position over their opponents in the Civil War, and it seemed imminent that the title of Praedu Laucum would sit upon another head. This world, in short, continued to tumble out of control, and it seemed the upcoming decade had precious little else to define it other than more of the same.